I'm Chicano. And this is paradise. I'm literally standing in a place called Las Puertas del Cielo in Ibiza, which is heaven's doors, or heaven's door, right here. Today is a video that it's a video that I've been needing to make, and I just been afraid to make, mostly because I don't want to it's so near and dear to my heart, and I want to do it justice because of what happened. It was my experience with God. And we have to, as Christians, Catholics, any denomination, we have to tell our testimony, because it's the way God spoke to us. We're supposed to be here so that other people can learn from us and can be inspired through us. When we hear God's mercy, God's grace, God's love for us, from other people, it motivates us, it inspires us, it brings us closer to God. And that's why this is important. And if you've ever had an experience with God, I urge you, I plead with you to share it with the world. I know it's difficult because it's very personal, but in sharing, you inspire other people to want to get closer to God. And so the story is about my father's passing, his death, which was the hardest thing I've ever had to experience in my life. The hardest thing by far. And it's not just the fact that he died, it's how he died, and which was violently, even though it was by quote unquote natural causes. And he went so fast. And he lived with me he came to me sick from Mexico. And because my dad wanted to die with me. Now I know that he wanted to, he knew his time has come, or he knew that I could help him. And I tried my best to help him, and I just couldn't, because he was so far gone, A little bit about my dad. First of all, he was a hardworking man. He was very he couldn't show love. He couldn't show love verbally or physically. He wasn't affectionate is the right word. He showed his love through other ways, like by always being punctual, always working hard, never missing a day of work because he had to feed his family, things like that. But he wasn't very affectionate, and so well, because of that, he lived by himself. He lived with us, but then he moved to Mexico to live with his sister, who was one of his best friends. And then his sister died, and so he was alone. And he was the type of man that even though he was responsible, he was a hustler. He had little hustles on the side everywhere, in spite of him on top of him working. But he couldn't, there was little things like, reminding him to take his medicine. He would forget to take his medicine. And that's why I always wanted him by my side. But, there was tension between him and my mom. And my mom was already old too, and she was living with us, with my wife and I. And so, somebody had to go, and he was the bigger man. He was the man, and left and went off to live by himself. And so no one was there to give him his medicine. He took blood pressure medicine. And now thinking about it, he had dementia. He had, dementia. His mom suffered severe dementia and Alzheimer's, and my dad started showing signs of that early on. Now in retrospect, I know that what was happening. He would forget little things, and he would come back and he would forget a lot. Keys, moments. He would come back and talk to me about something that we already talked about, and at the time I was funny because he was still fully reasonable, and I'm like, we just talked about that, and like, we did, and I'm like, yeah. And so imagine living alone and forgetting to take your blood pressure medicine and your diabetes medicine. So long story short, he had a stroke. He had a pretty bad stroke, and by himself. Think about that, guys. He had a stroke by himself, and he took it. That was the thing with my dad. He was a strong man. He used to take pain. He was never sick. He was sick, but he would never tell you that he's sick, and he'll be like, I'm just fine, I'm good, don't worry about it. And he had Parkinson's disease on top of that. Think about that. He had Parkinson's, and he was living by himself. He had early signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, and so he had that stroke. And talking to my family that lived over there, I have uncles, cousins, and aunts in Mexico that live in the same area. They said that they just saw him walking, and that he was walking like this, like just aimlessly with his head down. And then people would talk to him, and he's like, oh, estoy bien, like, I'm fine, But then when you would talk to him, my dad was quick with it. He was quick with it. And so I learned after he came to me that he kept having mini strokes after the big stroke. And as soon as he got to me, I took him to the hospital right away. And I'm not gonna say they tried their best, because I know if he had money, they would have treated him differently. And if we had money to just give for all the treatment that he needed, he would have been treated differently. But they basically said he came too late. If he would have came before, like when he just had the major stroke, then we would be able to care for him, it'd be easier. But all we can do now is give him physical therapy or whatever. And I was like, okay. And so then he goes back to us, to the house, and he continues to have these strokes. Think about that, guys. He continues to have these strokes in front of me. Violent. He starts getting seizures too, and one point it was so bad that my wife, she woke up to go to work, and she went in to check on my dad like we always did, because at this time he had already lost his ability to eat for himself. He had already lost his ability to go to hold his urine, which was very difficult. And like I'm telling you, these times are hard, they really were, because I had to literally change my dad's diaper with the help of my wife, God bless her soul, but she walked in, and she yelled out such a big cry, and she came into the room, and she's like, your dad. And I was like, he died. I know I'm gonna say it was worse than him dying, but what we saw was pretty bad, because it looked like a murder scene. It looked like he had just been stabbed to death. There was blood everywhere, soaked everywhere. You could tell he was doing this and going like that everywhere. All his sleeping shirt and his pajamas, they were soaked with blood. The bed was full of blood. So who knows how long he was there bleeding out. And what happened was that during one of his seizures that he had, he bit his tongue almost clearly all off. And I was just so scared to death. The ambulance came, they took him, and at this point the demon of anger, it came out, because I let the ambulance have it. The way they were treating him, just like they were there chatting and stuff, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? My dad's having a medical emergency, take him to the hospital, and he's like, sir, we're trying our best. I'm like, no, you're not, you're over here chatting, pack him up and let's go, and it was worse than that, but I don't want to get into that, because that's one of the demons that I'm really fighting, is the demon of anger and rage. And then they took him to the hospital, and I told him, see, what you guys are doing is not enough. He's here dying. Look what's happening, And they said, well, honestly, he's so bad that I see that you're stressed and that your wife is stressed. Like, he needs to go into hospice. And I'm like, no, because hospice means that he's gonna die, you know. And the doctor was like, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but he is gonna die, you know. And I just couldn't hear that, and I was like, absolutely not. So I took him home, and we fought again for, like, you know. Now what I was doing, I'm like alternative medicine type of guy. So, you know, I was looking at everything to, you know, help people recover from stroke, you know, help you know, people with Parkinson's, you know, all that. I was doing all that, and it wasn't helping. It wasn't helping. And it was very difficult. I had the difficult conversation with my wife about putting him into hospice. And we agreed that we would have hospice. He would be in hospice, but he would be hospice at our house, you know. And so this continued. It continued to the point where, you know, he would like brush his teeth. He would act like he was brushing his teeth with his comb, you know, little things like that happen to people with dementia. And it was just bad seeing him like just shrivel up, you know, and die. And it was so difficult for me psychologically at that time. You know, I didn't work. I stopped working just to care for my dad 100%. My wife was holding us down too with her job as a teacher. And so I was seeing my dad day in and day out. And there was times where I even snapped on my dad, you know, for him not being able to do the things that, you know, he was able to do. And it was just me being frustrated with having to care for an adult for so long and having to do everything. And more than anything, me being frustrated at that he was leaving me, because I loved him so much, and I was so upset. And I would tell him, you know, like, why didn't you take care of yourself? Why didn't you ask for help? Because my dad would never ask for help. As long as he lived, he never asked for help. He could do everything on his own. And man, that's so hard to do, you know, because I am not like that. If I need help, I ask for it. And he wasn't like that. And I told him, this is why you ask for help, Dad. I would tell him, and I know he would listen. And tell him, this is why you ask for it. Look at the situation we're in now. I could have gone over to Mexico and been with you, you know, like, you should have just asked, like, hey son, I need help. And so it was that anger that I know I was losing him. And so, you know, to cut the story short, because I don't want to prolong it, there's more, and I'll probably touch more I'll touch on this a little more in the future. But he died. And my whole family was there the day he passed, which, if you know my family, that was a big feat. And that responsibility was square on my shoulders, which is, I believe that's the main reason why my dad came to me over my other siblings, because he knew that I would do whatever it takes to get everybody together in the same room for his passing. Because that's all. My dad loved us so much. And that's all he wanted. But that's still not my experience with God, you know. Before he passed, like, we were all there, and my sister just got up and went straight to him. And then my heart started pounding, you know, because at this time he was in the hospital. He wasn't getting any more fluids. They were basically waiting for him to dry up and his heart to stop. And I got energy. I felt energy so deep. And I'm like, I looked at my wife, and there were so many times where we're thinking, oh, this is the moment. And it was like so unsure. But at that moment, it was like there was no doubt. We all looked at each other, you know, and we just went to him, and I'm like, and I started telling him, Dad, I love you, Papa, te quiero, you know, thank you for being here for us and the whole family. You're going off to a better place, you know. And this was, as my dad was dying, you could see like a smile on his face. And during it was like a whole week process of him dying in the hospital. This is aside from him dying at the house with me. It was like a whole week where we were all stressed out. My sister stopped working that week. My brother stopped working that week. We were all stressed out. And he was like happy. He was like happy and the most confident like I've ever seen him. you know, and I would tell him, hey dad, you know, just to cheer him up, you're gonna be all right, you know. This is before he stopped opening his eyes. You're gonna be all right, you know, like we're here, we're all here, you know, God is good. And he would open his eyes and he would go like that, you know, like saying, yeah, I know, you know. And so but to get back to that moment, he, like, his eyes were closed and he hadn't opened them for over a day, and then he opened them, looked me in my eyes and quickly closed them. Looked me in my eyes and quickly closed them. And he passed. The nurse came in and confirmed it, but we already knew. And there was like an energy of love in the room. We were all just happy. And my brother and I had gotten into some ish. We got into something at the hospital. You know, just family stuff that came out and having to do with my dad and all that. And at that moment, it was all love. It was all love right there. But then this is still not the moment. So his death hadn't hit me completely, you know. And I was at that time, dude, I was living on beautiful 20 acres in Redwood Valley, California, with my wife and I mean, there we were very close to God. Not as close as we are here right now, but man, that was a special place. My favorite place in all of California. And I know California from top to bottom. You're very close to the stars. You see the stars every day. It's a beautiful night every night. And so I was asking God for signs, you know. And then one time I just got in my truck because we had a little lake, and I just drove up to the lake, you know. And then my wife came and she stood next to me, you know, and I started calling out for God angrily, you know, angrily. I was like, God, let me know that my dad is okay. Let me know that he is going up to heaven. Let me know that me praying the rosary every day for him is enough for him to get out of the purgatory and into your grace, into heaven, with his mom, his sister, and all the other angels and saints. Please, Father Lord, give me a sign, you know. And after saying this, pleading so hard all day, night came, nightfall, and I'm like, and I looked at up at the stars, and with my wife, and I had my wife in tears, and I'm like, Father Lord, give me a sign now. Boom, a falling star hits. And before this, I hadn't seen a falling star in years, right? And then I look at my wife and I'm like, did you see that? And she's like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, oh, you missed it. I think that's the sign that I was talking for. And as I'm saying that, boom, another one hits. And my wife, she's like, I saw that. And I'm like, see, I told you. And then boom, another one hits. And I'm like, babe, did you see that? And then she's like, yes. And I'm like, thank you, Father Lord. I start crying. I start bawling. I start crying. I'm like, you're telling me that my dad's gonna be okay. You know, you're telling me that he's going up with you. You're making your presence felt, Father Lord. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling the energy. And I kid you not. Boom, another falling star. Boom, another falling star. Boom, a shooting star. Boom, a shooting star. A falling star. It was like a shower of stars everywhere in the sky that day. Everywhere in the sky. That's my testimony, guys. This really happened to me. And I'm so thankful to God that it happened with my wife right next to me, because she can vouch for it. You know, and this is what I feel. I feel a lot of people are afraid to tell their testimony out of fear that people will think they're crazy. Out of fear, they're like, yeah, that really didn't happen. It may have happened like that, but or yeah, maybe, but not. He's exaggerating a little bit, you know. No, I'm not. I am not exaggerating. It was a storm of falling stars mixed in with a couple of shooting stars, and I don't even know like when's the last time that's happened, you know. But it happened there in front of us, and my wife, she was just sobbing so uncontrollably. And at that point, it was just happiness. It was happiness, because all we ever wanted was for my dad to be in peace in heaven. That's all we ever wanted, is for him to be in peace in heaven, because his life here on earth was difficult. My dad lived a difficult life. He had to care for family here and family in Mexico, because he had 17 brothers and sisters, and out of all of them, he was the hardest working. He was the hardest working. A lot of them, they have bad vices, you know. So it was his responsibility to care for his mom, his sister, and even brothers and stuff that should have been taking care of themselves. And he had to raise a family in the United States, never making more than $20,000 a year. You know, he worked in an assembly line. He worked packing potatoes, guys. He worked, you know what my dad did? And this broke my heart to see him like this. He used to flip signs. As a retired man, he started flipping signs, and I'm like, Dad, why are you doing that? You know, like, and knowing my dad is just, once he lost his job, which this is what I'm saying for people that are jobbers, take care of yourself, because my dad worked for a company for 25 years, and when he got old and couldn't produce as much as he could anymore, they forcefully retired his ass, you know. And my dad wanted to keep working, and he was 61 when this happened, and he became so depressed. He just needed work, you know. He was a jobber, he needed work. And when I saw him flipping signs, I felt so ashamed. I'm like, how can you, you know, you hear, you know, you could take care of your dad, and you're letting him flip signs, you know. But it wasn't a money thing for him. It was just him needing to work, because he, like I told you guys before, he didn't know how to live with his family in love. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't know how to bond with us. You know what I'm saying? Because all he ever did his whole life was work, 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 work. Here's the money. My dad was like, he would make his check. Here, give the check to my mom. All of it. You know, and he would save himself like $150 so that, you know, he can drink on the weekends with his buddies. And even then, he would buy the beer for everybody. So that's why he was loved. And one thing about my dad, he had a lot of friends. He was very social, extremely social. And I love to say that, you know, because that's when you would really see him happy, when he was with his buddies. And so that's my story, that's my testimony, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And there'll definitely be more to talk about in regards to my father. And I'll see if I get the courage to share some of the videos that I took of him during our hard time. Maybe I'll attach it to this video, just so you guys could see exactly what I was going through. And if I can attach it to this video, I'll upload some shorts, you know, so that you guys could check it out, and so you guys could see the toughness. I'm not the toughness, but just how tough it is to, you know, live with someone that has, you know, dementia and Parkinson's, you know. And anyone that is caring for someone right now with Alzheimer's disease, dementia, Parkinson's, my heart goes out to you. And I pray to God right now, Father, Lord, hear my prayer. I pray that he blesses you with patience, love, and strength to do what you're doing, because Lord knows that you are an angel. It is hard work, and I know this firsthand. All right, guys, I'll talk to you guys later. Stay tuned for more videos. And I remember that you reign. The man who walked on the water is walking over my storm. Oh yeah, the man who walked on the water is walking over my storm. And I remember that you reign.